I welcome to the stage the moderator of this session, Hamish Mackenzie.
Thank you, Lucian. Good morning, good afternoon, or even good evening to some of you, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome. My name is Hamish Mackenzie, and thank you for joining us for today's IIoT World Sustainability and AI session on enhancing manufacturing processes through AI and low-code integration, sponsored today by Flowfuse. First off, it would be great if you could just tell us who you are, where you are in the chat function. It's always nice to get a feel for who's joining us. And while you do that, get settled in, grab a coffee or whatever, just a few bits of housekeeping. The session's going to last an hour. I'll be introducing the topic and our special guests today. And obviously, we'll be getting a lot of great insights from them, but we'll also leave some time for questions from the most important people in the room, which is, of course, you, our audience. Quick point of order there. Please put your questions in the Q&A function in the platform here. It just makes it easier for us to find them. More likely you'll get your question answered then as well. And it just makes my life easier, which I'm always a big fan of course. So yeah, use the Q&A function. We'll get to as many as you can, and don't wait until the end of the session. As soon as a question pops into your head, then please get it in there, and we'll get to them in the last 10 minutes or so of the session. As I'm sure you're aware, we do a lot of these events throughout the year. I just want to give you a quick heads up on the two more that there are coming up this year. We have the Cybersecurity Day on October 17th and the Manufacturing and Supply Chain Day on December 7th. And you can find details on all of those on the IIoT World website as usual. So, time to focus on this session now. In this session, we're going to be discovering how integrating AI with low-code development platforms like Node-RED can revolutionize manufacturing processes. We're going to delve into how AI-driven low-code solutions can simplify complex workflows, enhance predictive maintenance, and streamline supply chain management. We'll look at how leveraging visual programming and seamless integration can help manufacturers significantly reduce development times, lower operational costs, and boost production efficiency. And we're also going to hear some about some real-world examples, how these technologies enable rapid innovation, quicker time to market, things like that. We know you, our audience, are always very keen on those real-world examples. So with that said, I just want to introduce our very special guests very quickly. First up, we have Nick O'Leary, who is CTO and founder of Flowfuse, the sponsor of this session. And as CTO, Nick is leading the Node-RED project and building a low-code development platform. Before starting Flowfuse, he was at IBM for over 19 years, working across a wide range of technologies. And he spends a lot of his time playing with IoT technologies, having worked on projects ranging from smart meter energy metering monitoring to retrofitting sensors to industrial manufacturing lines with Raspberry Pis and Arduinos. With a background in pervasive messaging, he contributes to the Eclipse PAHO project and sits on the Oasis MQTT technical committee and on the OpenJS Cross Project Council. So he's a very, very busy man. Thank you for sparing the time for us, Nick. Great to have you with us. Next, we have Andreas Luth, who is Managing Director and Chief Evangelist Digital Factory at German Edge. Andreas's focus is on strategic leadership and operational excellence, with an emphasis on spearheading Industry 4.0 and 5.0 transformation. His team's efforts have culminated in significant revenue growth and the successful consolidation of diverse business units into a really cohesive entity, enhancing overall operational efficiency. So that's his focus. Great to have you with us, Andreas. Next up, we have Josh Mattingly, who is AI Strategy Manager at Conagra Brands. Josh is a subject matter expert in big data analytics and visualization with real-world experience across the entire data pipeline. So he understands how to leverage popular data science models and has the statistical knowledge also to implement current and future advances in machine and deep learning. He's very focused on using technology to remove existing workflow bottlenecks, and his work includes reviewing popular data science news sources, really digging into research papers and partnering with universities as well. So he's really getting into the weeds on all this stuff. And he distills his findings in ways that audiences like you can then, regardless of your different technical experience levels, can make it easily comprehensible. So that's Josh's expertise. Thank you for joining us, Josh. And last but not least, we have Fabian Wanke, who's Senior Analyst at ARC Advisory Group. Fabian is part of the automation team covering manufacturing topics across Europe, and he specializes in discrete and hybrid industries, including semiconductors, automotive, pharma, various different machinery topics, and economic modeling and forecasting. He's got a special focus on automation controllers, including industrial PCs, new automation platforms, and PLCs. And he's got experience across automotive, industrial PCs, R&D grants, consulting market as well. And before joining ARC, he worked as an international project manager in France, Germany, and Slovakia in the automotive industry. So a lot of experience there as well. Very excited to have you with us today as well, Fabian. And finally, very few words about me. Your moderator for today, my name's Hamish Mackenzie. I'm a former IDC analyst. I've been running my consulting and advisory practice here in Munich, Germany since 2006. And I work alongside CEOs, founders, other senior executives to help them with their growth efficiency across their businesses. And that includes the integration of AI into their business workflows as well. I also help them become more effective leaders by helping them focus more on strategy and helping them get out of the day-to-day operations where they often get bogged down, as I'm sure some of you in the audience will know. And if you'd like to know more about me, please look me up on LinkedIn. I'm the only Hamish Mackenzie in Munich, so it shouldn't be too hard to find me. So with all of that said, I would like to now get started and get into it. And what I always like to try and do in these sessions is to kind of try and set the scene a little bit. And so to that end, I'd like to start with Fabian. So what we're talking about initially here, Fabian, is industrial grade AI. So maybe you can just kind of set the scene for us, tell us what is industrial grade AI and why do we need it from your perspective?
So thanks again for having me, and I think this is a really good starting point, and this is not that easy to explain. So first of all, what is AI? I have there several problems here to define it. Maybe this is a discussion we should have also in another session. But industrial grade AI, it has to meet rigorous requirements and standards, and I think all of you can contribute. So especially I've always my automation glasses on, yeah, and the two S are the minimum requirements, speaking about safety, so functional safety and security on the one hand. On the other hand, it's really important that the software tools, the AI texts, are also accurate and reliability. And we're speaking about another thing as maybe in consumer, even in IT text, yeah, 80%, 85% accuracy is not what we want to achieve. Yeah? And I think with that in mind, we can really start a conversation. So think always about safety, security, accuracy, and reliability.
Okay, and I mean, of course, just, you know, with the AI topic generally, every few years there comes along a technology where everybody starts talking about it, even if, you know, even people who know nothing about it, and that obviously leads some people to start generating a lot of hype and people getting caught up in the hype, and it sometimes starts becoming difficult to work out, okay, what's hype, what's reality, you know, where's the intersection between the two? So I wanted to ask you, Josh, really, first of all, in terms of, because there is a lot of hype around this whole topic at the moment, right? And has been for the last couple of years now. So what's your perspective on this, Josh? How do you see it in terms of, you know, the volume of hype there is out there versus the realistic expectations of what the technology can actually do, especially within a manufacturing context?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a great question because, well, like you said, there's a lot of hype around it. People have, I think, especially in this current state where we have ChatGPT, where we have all of these different Gen AI technologies out there, this is, I really feel, the first time where anybody could, it's the closest that someone who hasn't gone to school or studied data science, hasn't studied program, could go from just raw data to be able to generate a forecast just by dumping some data into ChatGPT and saying, forecast this. Mm-hmm. Once you have sort of that foundational knowledge of what is happening underneath it, though, that's when you can, you know, for me, a lot of the time, someone will say, look at this amazing thing. And a data scientist, myself, or one of my colleagues will then talk through what's actually happening and some of the things that a generative AI model may not be able to capture. And I also think this is something that I see that's different right now versus when data science was really starting to become a more common phrase, just more top of mind, is that because being able to get something that is so, like, the results are really impressive and they're really easy to get to. so people's imaginations and start to sort of leap ahead to what is possible, which is totally true, and should be, we should do more to try and make sure people still are thinking that way. But in the past, it was slower. There was more explanation to the people who were sort of making the decisions, and the solutions that we can get to are potentially the same or similar. Like, I mentioned forecasting. How we will do forecasting will be different, but the safeguards we have to put in place are still going to be there. And so I think what happened at Conagra about a year and a half ago was all this buzz about generative AI came out. And so all of a sudden, all these massive use cases about like transforming the food industry. And this happened across the CPG industry. So it's not any, insider information. But then those big, huge, massive ideas started to face the reality of this new technology, or this new way of using AI is still running on the same systems and still is having to do the same jobs. And so now I think there's the outlook on it has matured enough to the point where now when we talk about it, now when we're developing use cases, and so when we say AI, whether it's traditional or generative AI, it's more understanding it as a tool that we can use instead of this revolutionary new thing that's going to 100% completely transform how we all do work.
Okay, so yeah, you're taking kind of the pragmatic middle ground there, I think, by the sound, while acknowledging that, what Fabian was saying before about, reliability and security, which are important for any of these technologies, whether it's AI or anything else, is still very important. But let me come back to Fabian then on this issue about hype. From your perspective around, in the manufacturing world, Fabian, do you think the hype has gone too far? Do you think we need to kind of have a little bit of a reset, or what's your view on that?
So hopefully you can understand me, and the mic is quite okay. Now
definitely improved. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So for me, it's clear. Yeah, the word hype already implies that it's overestimated. Yeah. So that's why we call it hype. Yeah. And being now, since I finished university in the automation world, and as I started. AI at the moment is always more or less, if you see all what you read in the papers, in the magazines out there, is always linked to the large language models. But that's why about which AI text we speak. Machine learning, predictive maintenance, all those really fancy statistic models. It's incredible, already sophisticated text out there. Where is the line? Yeah, so it really depends about what we speak, also about what industry we speak. Yeah, and for me, it will really transform and change a lot of ways how we do work, how efficiency and effectiveness will improve. So yes and no. Yeah, there is an hype out there, and we have to really look of grounding it. And what is for me much more linked to it, it's expectation management. Why I'm saying this, if you are going out there and you think this is AI text, and especially large language model, they are not a holy grail. It's an incredible new tech. It opens a lot of opportunities out there, but at the end, expectations versus reality shouldn't match. And this is really something which, in my opinion, should be grounded. And I want to just make an example, because I'm also following, because I love the additive manufacturing, the industrial 3D printing world. And this is also, it was a hype in the last 10 years. And there were sayings like, for example, it will completely eliminate classical CNC machine. No, it will not. It will additionally pop up, and especially in additive manufacturing, which is a machinery company, or AI techs are already used, whether it's vision. And I think we will also speak then when we come to low or no coding about robotics. This isn't that new.
Yeah, the hype is there, and it's absolutely, I can underline that those large language models will have a big impact, but we have to make them industrial grade. And again, yeah, it's about reliability, accuracy, and also following the automation standards. And I think Nick, George, Andreas, and even we all can give a lot of examples. And so for me, yes, there is a hype. It's not too bad. We should not overestimate it. It's a grounding and not promising that we can do all at once.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I very much appreciate your passion on this subject. By the way, it's great to see that, and I think maybe with that said, it's important to now to come on to to talk more about the real world impact. And so I wanted to come to Nick now and bring in the low code aspect that you just mentioned, Fabian. So I mean, Nick, when we're looking at modern manufacturing, what difference can low code platforms make in terms of being able to handle the increasing complexity and the sheer volume of data that manufacturing produces?
Thanks, Hamish. So I mean, one of the key benefits of low code is the sort of raising that abstraction layer up a level of providing the tools to help people build the solutions they want to build without having to get deep in the weeds of the how you implement it. It lets them focus on the what. And certainly with Node-RED and similar projects, that's kind of the sweet spot they're hitting, in that it just makes it far more accessible to a wider range of engineer to help them build their solutions. And it's that raised level of abstraction that helps them to do more and more powerful things and handle that increased complexity by trying to get that abstraction right, to make it easy to do those hard tasks. And when you look at the volume of data, I mean, one of the key things is how these tools can help you just simply organize that data. How can these tools help you make sense of that data? With things like unified namespace, other efforts like that, just trying to bring some organization. And again, it's about abstraction, trying to provide more simplified mental models of your world that help you reason about it and build your solutions around that. And it's all about getting that balance right between the raw data that you now have available to you, but is the raw data really the useful thing? It's the information you can glean from it. So how can these platforms actually help you focus on the knowledge, the information in your data without overwhelming you with the individual bits of data flying around your platform?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I can't remember or exactly give a date when people started first talking about big data, for example, back in the day. But I know through my experiences with all my clients over the last 20, 30 years that, the percentage of companies of any kind who've managed to extract the actionable insight that you're talking about from the massive volumes of data that they've been producing, the fraction of companies that are able to do that is surprisingly small. Let's put it that way. And one of my big hopes for AI is that it's gonna improve that situation basically, and make it easier and faster for people to get real usable insight from all this data. Because as you say, otherwise, if you've just got this huge mass, then are we really better off? All right, so with that said, I want to just touch on a topic that Fabian already mentioned, which is security. So I mean, how do you ensure the security of the AI models and data used within low-code platforms within these industrial settings, which are sometimes very critical? Manufacturing a cereal is one thing, but manufacturing an engine or something is a whole. This can affect people in very important ways, obviously, when things go wrong. So, what about security?
Clearly, it is an important topic. It's and again, some of the answers are different depending on what type of AI we're talking about here. But a lot of the common threads are: it's a question of what trust you have to put in your AI model, and that comes from how has that AI model been trained, or what data has it been trained on, who's provided that data, all those sorts of questions you need to understand, because ultimately the AI model is only as good as the data it's trained on. And if you train it on poor quality data or unreliable data, then that's going to affect the successful outcomes of what your model is able to achieve. And then when we talk about low code software development, I mean, having proper change control process in your software development lifecycle for traditional software development is just part and parcel of how you do professional development. And there's no reason those things shouldn't also apply in low code environments. Certainly one of the things we're doing with FlowFuse in Node-RED is bringing in those sorts of controls. So you want to have proper access controls, understanding who can change what, understanding what your change management process is. Again, just because it's low code and it's quick and easy doesn't mean that just anyone can wander up to a system and start making changes. Clearly that isn't the model you want. So on the AI side, it's a lot about understanding the pedigree, understanding the how that model has been brought to bear, and then with the low code environment, it's making sure you've got the right controls in place so that you know who's doing what, who has access to modify what systems, who has access to update and train AI models. And it's a lot of just bringing to bear very well understood, very well established software development practices to the industrial setting.
Okay, so just because it's low code doesn't mean that all the rules change suddenly. Those basics are still in place.
Absolutely. All
right. So Andreas, one of the favorite, as I mentioned at the beginning, one of the audience's favorite things is to hear about some use cases and some real world examples. And I was wondering if you could tell us about some use cases in manufacturing for low code applications that you've seen out there in the market.
Sure. Thank you for that question. There are many exciting use cases, I think, but maybe let's look at two use cases which I've seen, simple ones in manufacturing, which I'd like to share with you guys. First one is with quality control inspections. Imagine there's a part which requires an inspection, and using a low-code application, you could create maybe an interface where users can see the image of the part. You click on maybe one part or a specific area of the part where you would want to measure a characteristic. You will be displayed with nominal values, and you would import the measured results of your inspection. And obviously then, if it's more powerful, even if you then have immediate access to historical data upon that click, users may want to use graphs of the historical data showing trends over time, maybe some insights with issues in the inspections of that part across the previous inspections. Obviously, such low-code environment would need to have a tight integration with your quality management systems. That's for sure to access those data. Second use case, which I always find pretty interesting, is involving a daily stand-up meeting at a shift change. Usually, when on the shop floor, you group in your team and talk about what's up for the day. When you shift, the next shift begins. What has been produced so far? Are there any issues? Are all machines in line? What's up for the day? And those operational dashboards typically, a lot of the times, are actually drawings on a wall, on a paper or whatever. Imagine that would be digital. Imagine you would have the capability to really customize those views and dashboards to your needs, because I think that every factory is actually different. Even though you might have a global blueprint, every factory will be slightly different. Every process in the factory data will be slightly different. So I think incredible value if you have the ability here to actually tailor that to the local needs of that specific factory. And again, MES, MOM system integration is crucial, of course. Who would do that? Probably not the shop floor worker itself, but more like the shift manager, maybe the quality manager in the first example. But even there, we see, regulations change quite regularly from a quality perspective. So, with that customizable interfaces and applications, you will have the possibility to be agile, to do not depend upon external support to be up to date in your applications on the shop floor.
Okay, I try to minimize when I do this, but I don't think this is going to throw either of you off too much. If I just ask, do you have any sense of particular manufacturing, in terms of vertical sectors, particular types of manufacturer? Are you seeing more examples of this stuff actually happening now in any particular sector? Or is there nobody's kind of taking the lead necessarily from a vertical market perspective?
You mean in manufacturing?
Yes,
across
exactly.
all manufacturing.
Yeah.
I would have a hard time saying that there's a specific leader. I've read that manufacturing in general is actually quite advanced. Banking is always also heavily in front. But I was even surprised to see manufacturing at the leading edge here as well.
Mm-hmm.
But within manufacturing, specific one, I don't know. Maybe Nick, Fabian, Josh, you want to elaborate on that, but I would have a hard time saying there's one specific niche or area within manufacturing which is leading.
Maybe I can say some words about it. So for sure, because I'm also looking at the robotics market now, in industrial robotic markets, more than 10 years, and just conducted also a study on it. And if I just think about a low code, no code robot teaching is existing quite a long time, and even not just the big ones like the names all know, from KUKA, Fanuc, and so on. Even other European machine builders are absolutely at the forehand. For example, Keba also just released 2 years ago really a nice low no code programming. So I really think a lot of comes from robotics also since years. And also when we talk about virtualization, automotive is also on the forehead. Why? Food and bev and pharma, for example, just think about if you install or change something on an existing system, certification, regulations to meet, especially, and I think we will talk about that or mention it later. More and more regulations are popping up. You cannot compare peers with apples. It's really look at the verticals, but for me, really always a forehead. And just think about also now with AI together with the humanoid or service robots, how the VDMR is defining it. This is incredible. Also mentioning drones, but also other industries. When I think about Trumpf, laser cutting, how long they use really sophisticated software plus smart sensors or a lot of cameras, and this is at the end. You need also the sensors which produce the data. So with the rise of more and more required data, also the number of sensors installed out there is rising. And this is also making the complexity even bigger and bigger. And at the same time, you have popping up and also necessary new regulations.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Regulation is, we don't tend to get too involved in that in these forums, but obviously it's something that you definitely have to be aware of and take account of, and has a huge influence on especially the speed of deployment and the speed of evolution of these markets and these projects. All right. Speaking of which, I think it would be we'd be paying a disservice to our audience if we pretended that this is all exciting and everything is possible today. There are of course challenges, as there are with any adoption of any new technology, and so I think it's only fair that we look at some of those now. And so Andreas, I wanted to come to you first and ask what do you see as the blockers to low-code applications being used more broadly by, what you mentioned before about who's actually going to be using these applications. So what are the blockers? Is it things like ease of use, or what is it?
I've seen two blockers, or two issues, so to say. One is around resources, right? The perception, or the idea is, we are short of developers, we are short of IT resources. So let's use no-code, low-code applications, and then we have the business doing that stuff for us, right? And guess what? Business also does not have any resources, right? So who ends up actually developing the applications or the configurations, let's say, is often external consultants, right? And that is sort of counterproductive, because you need to train them on the business knowledge first. You extend your timelines. You need to hire them, maybe even at a higher cost. So sort of that is a constraint, I would definitely say. Resources. Second one I've seen is the generic nature of low-code platforms. A lot of the times, the platforms are used in manufacturing, but also you could use it in a core banking application to develop your next core banking app, right? And at least from my perspective, really the value of a low-code, no-code application is really when you have an industry-specific application, best of breed, and you get 80% of your solution for your industry, for your use case out of the box, and you use that low-code, no-code sort of to maybe adjust or compose, customize the last 20% to your needs. And that really enables then, even the business users to do that 20%, because they know their business best and they know how to do that. Then they actually get fast and agile with what they actually want to do, right? So those two constraints I've seen.
Okay, and so looking at a specific area then, I know that Fabian has some thoughts on the kind of blockers, the barriers for machinery builders in particular, using AI technologies, right, Fabian?
Yeah, as I already mentioned, and closing the loop, it's really at the moment machine builders, especially in Europe, but it doesn't matter. And also the same is true for all the automation suppliers. They have to deal with the NIS2. And the NIS2 standards should be applied in October. And I just was 2 weeks ago at an end user conference. Companies do not have the resources. And this is one thing, but they have to deal with it. You really have to be aware of that together then with the Cybersecurity Resilience Act, plus the EU AI Act, and so on. This is for me a real blocker, because when you then want to integrate new tags, plus the whole maybe new certification of already an existing machine, this is really in machinery one blocker. Andreas mentioned for sure the expertise. The one thing you have really to know the process, and we're speaking about the machinery industry is so complex. Just when you look even in one industry, in semiconductor, how many small, I'm not speaking about the big ones. The big ones, they have the money, they have the resources. But really look at SMEs. This is really, really tough for them to handle. So it is not priority. They have to follow the rules. They want to sell again the machines. And the machine has to run at least 10 up to 20 years. And then to integrate new techs causes issues, and you have to solve them. Then in machinery builders, also for, let's say, AI techs, where you need a lot of data and accurate data, you get out when the machine is running at the end user. So we speak to really enhance it, how to share, what data to share, how to share it on a secure, safe way, also then with all the compliance. Just think about data. So we are at the beginning. And I'm absolutely, we need in automation, there's no discussion. We need regulations, we need certifications, but for sure, this is it's slowing down. So in automation, nothing is eaten as hot as at the moment everybody is writing or boiling with those texts. And then also the question with this is coming, with whom I'm partnering. I'm trusting, but I think really there's a breaking down the silos, because we need the data. This is a really, really new topic that from automation suppliers, from system integrators, machine builders, all want to get the data from the end users. Which end users is cooperating with whom? Yeah, and therefore also the big ones have a really big advantage compared to also really innovative, small and mid-sized, also startups in that sector. So we have at the moment incredible new ideas, a lot of startups coming up as always, and then we need also consolidation and partnership. So this is also something we have to establish, partnerships and collaboration to get a benefit out, and this will also take some time.
Absolutely, and that's actually one of the things that events like this can actually help foster. It's a very important part of why IIoT World does this, in order to put people in touch with each other that might not necessarily otherwise have that opportunity. And it quite often happens that people meet each other in the chat and end up creating partnerships out of that. So yeah, very, very important. All right, just a quick reminder for everyone to get those questions in. We'll be ready to go into those questions in about 15 minutes, ideally. So please, if you have a question, get it in the Q&A area now to make sure you get your question answered. We'll do our best to get through as many as possible. All right. So I wanted to now come back to Nick in terms of this whole AI and low-code integration piece. So Nick, what are some of the key challenges or obstacles that manufacturers are going to encounter when they're trying to do exactly that, to integrate these two things? And once you know what the challenges are, how can they go about overcoming them?
Well, I think it echoes a lot of what Andreas and Fabian have said in their two questions, that there isn't a silver bullet here with AI. It takes effort to do properly, to do safely, particularly when we're looking at as we've already talked about, we have a long tradition of AI, machine learning, data science. The name has changed, but it's been around for decades. And the more recent trend around the generative AI side, which, it's incredible to see how fast that has come. But I think a lot of the sort of the predictive maintenance world, there are a lot of very well understood problems in that space. And again, a lot of it comes down to you can't just take off-the-shelf solutions for a lot of this stuff, because it has to be built for your data, for your scenario, for your problems. And I think, it's how you do that effectively, whether in low code or not. That is a real challenge of how you, like I said, we don't have shortcuts to profit in this. That to do this well does require the effort and the investment to do it. But the other side of it, when we look at what's interesting about the generative AI side, one of the challenges is absolutely going to be how you deal with the hype of it, of the pressure of being told, we need to be doing stuff in this space because look, everyone's doing stuff in this space. It's ultimately you've got to work out what's the actual business problem you want to solve. You're not using it for the sake of using it. You're using it to actually derive value to your business. And whether that's generative AI or whatever it might be, one of the challenges is making sure you're focused on how you actually get real value from it and justify the investment it takes to get to that point. And then when you look at some of the challenges with low code, these AI models, they are additional assets you need to manage. You've got to work out how, as you update and as the model evolves, how are you going to manage rolling that out across your infrastructure. One of the points made earlier about dealing with the volume of data, certainly one of the approaches there is push more processing out towards the edge. You get away from trying to get all your data into a central pool and worry about managing it there.
Mm-hmm.
How can we push AI out further out to the edges of your environment so that you can be more selective as to what data gets pushed up? So some of those challenges, and in the low-code environment, is just how do you build these systems and how do you manage these systems to help manage a very distributed and very dispersed infrastructure that could be within a single factory, it could be across multiple sites, across multiple countries, whatever your needs are. So those are challenges. How do you overcome them? Like I said, they aren't necessarily shortcuts here. You do have to invest. You have to be clear on what value you're looking for and where you want to invest that time to overcome those challenges. I think there's so much potential here and so much opportunity, but I think the key is just keeping the focus on the value you need to get back from what you're trying to do, and not just do it for the sake of trying to join the wave of hype around certain choice of technologies, whether that's AI, whether it's whatever choice of technology comes and goes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's a big challenge for all my clients as well. I know that, on the one hand, everybody's being put under pressure. So we've got to do something. We've got to be AI. We've got to be, be seen to be positioned as a company which knows what it's doing and which is delivering new value from it. But then is one thing to say that, and another thing to actually then prove that whatever you're doing really is actually generating value. And it's not easy. And as you rightly pointed out, there's no silver bullet on this. All right. I always try and manage, commit myself actually to making sure we bring in a people aspect to all these topics, because technology is one thing, but at the end of the day, people have to be involved in implementing it, have to be involved in approving the investments, but it also can, potentially impact people in other ways. And one of the big topics, at least at the beginning, around all of this, the AI hype in particular, was, AI is coming for your job, and I think that's down, kind of being toned down a bit in recent months, but it's still a valid discussion, I think. And I mean, Josh, what do you think in terms of that, in terms of the introduction of these technologies potentially leading to big job losses in the manufacturing environment? How do you think about that, and how would you say that those concerns can be alleviated?
Well, I mean, my job title is AI strategy manager. So when a job gets cut, mine's going to be the first one. So you're absolutely right. As people have started to play around more with these new tools, taking their ideas and actually trying to produce them, reality setting in. It's not this silver bullet like was said before. And I think, honestly, the thing that I usually go to when it comes to just alleviating those concerns, helping people understand that jobs will change, just they do that no matter what. Any new technology, any new innovation, ways of thinking about business in general will change the jobs around us. Having said that, like Andreas said, and I think I'm cheating a little bit and looking through the Q&A, it was Ashka asked, I hope I pronounced that right, about finding off-the-shelf solutions. Consultants, third-party software, they can do jobs very well. But, for instance, I work for a company that's over 100 years old, and it's evolved over that century. And the one thing that's never happened is like everyone getting fired, all the factories being torn down, all the databases being scrubbed, and then everything being set up completely brand new to fit these best practices that we've been told to use by these different companies. And so I don't know if there are enough resources available to make all of these things just work the way that we all want them to and expect them to work. There's always going to need to be that human element involved. From a manufacturing standpoint, what's the one thing you need is a steady state. So you have to be able to minimize randomness as much as humanly possible. What does an AI not do? Remove randomness. I mean, one of the first things you do is you have to set the seed. So you actually have to say, this is the form of randomness we're going to use. And I've started to take the newest tools that we have. ChatGPT is the one I keep going to because it's the one that, it's like you said, someone asked our CEO, what are you guys doing with generative AI? He asked his CEO, who asked the VP of data science, who asked the director of data science, who asked me, and here I am today. And I have started to equate it not as this new revolutionary thing that's going to take all of our jobs. Instead, I've started to position it more as, think about Microsoft Excel. I remember when I first started my career, I was doing sales analytics and reporting and logistics, and the sales reps were sending us, they were writing out their sales slips and mailing or faxing them in, then we would type them into a computer. Over time, Excel it went from just doing basic calculations, solves and reporting, all of these other things that didn't completely change the way that company made their product, but it changed how we sold it. It changed how, it was, before the big data revolution just started to explode, it was that stepping stone. So it didn't take jobs, it changed jobs. Yeah. And ultimately is now a tool that people still are using to be able to get that job done. And we still need the people to be able to look at something and go, that's not right. And a computer's like, well, this is what I was told to do. Because a human has that reasoning behind it to say, I don't know what that is, but I can tell when it's broken. And I really feel like that's sort of helped with those conversations. Yeah. And then you just show a couple examples of Gen AI gone wrong, and that usually sort of seals the deal of people saying oh, okay, so yeah. I also usually say that think of ChatGPT as the hardest working idiot you've ever met. They will try their hardest, but you will always need to check their work to make sure that they're not going to blow up the company.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. Perhaps two more things along in a similar vein. I mean, I think it probably will replace some jobs. There are some jobs that will slowly disappear, or at least change beyond all recognition. But what I hear a lot of people saying is that for most people, it's not going to replace people in their roles, but it will replace people who don't learn how to use AI. Mm-hmm. So if you try and ignore it, then you're in trouble. And I think that's as true in manufacturing as it is anywhere else. And then the only thing I would say is that someone told me once, when they invented the car, they didn't go around shooting all the horses. So just because something which is genuinely transformational comes along, it doesn't mean that it's gonna transform things as much as the certainly in the short term, as much as the hype merchants would have you believe. All right, so we're coming on to the last section, and I want to make sure we try and fit in some questions right at the end. But first, before we do that, Paul, could you please bring up the poll question? We have a quick poll that we wanted to ask just to see where people are in their low-code and AI and low-code integration journey. So if you could just give us your answers in there, please, audience, and give you a minute or two to do that. And while we do that, while you do that rather, I wanted to move on to the last section now, which is really just to take a look at the future now and give people some practical steps of how they can get started, and also look into the future a little bit and see what may be coming down the line. So Andreas, while people complete the poll, what's the advice that you would give to manufacturers in terms of getting started with low code, no code?
Good question. I don't think it's rocket science, right? But there are a few things to get right. Nick mentioned one of them already. Start with the business problem, right? With the business process. Look at what are you really trying to solve here, right? Hamish, you mentioned big data. And when we first did that, 12, 13 years ago, everyone said, our board said, now we have to do big data, we're doing it. And a year into it, we started asking ourselves, so what are we trying to solve, right? So really start with that business problem and think about that. What are you trying to improve? Second, I think we mentioned it already as well, focus on data, right? Think about where do you get the data from, where do you need integrations, internal databases, external APIs, third-party tools, wherever you get the data from. But you really think about where do you have it clear where you get that data from, which you will need. Third, as Josh just mentioned as well, probably none of us starts on a green field, right? So we have tools in our daily business. So look at where to pick your tools carefully, look at what you have already, look at how to integrate, and so on and so forth. Then last or fourth, look at who is actually going to use that or those tools, right? So probably it will not be the shop floor workers or something like that. Probably it will be your like IT key users. So identify the users who really want to deal with that. And the better, I think, the more background or the more technical background they have, I think, but still, within business when it comes to low code, no code applications. And then once you identify those citizen developers, if you want to call them that way, encourage them, provide resources to them as well to learn, to test, try various approaches. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. That is how they learn usually. And then last but not least, it's not a cost-free endeavor, right? So that will require training, experimenting, finding the right fit. So it will require time, resources, and investment, and be prepared to do that. So summary, have a clear use case, understand your data needs, think about tooling, identify the right people, and then give them room to experiment and be prepared to invest. I think that's good thing to do. All right,
fantastic. Thanks, Andreas. And Josh, so Andreas just talked about, even, within the low code environment, there's going to be different skill levels and different needs. What is that presumably similar in the AI space? I mean, how do you cope with that mix of different technical skill levels at the beginning?
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to what Nick was saying about needing to have people who are the experts in that to be able to help understand what it's supposed to do or look like. I would rather have a data scientist using ChatGPT to write some of their code or do something their analysis. Mm-hmm. Because even though they can write Python, they've been writing Python for decades, it would be easier for them to just be able to say it in their native language and then have it produce the results than to be able to look at it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think even with that though, one thing that I've been thinking about a lot during this call is just a couple days ago. So our AI strategy team has a UX designer. That's a specialty. That's what we went to school for. That's just what he does. And he went to one of our factories because they were having problems with some of their interfaces. And it was a low code design, whatever software they used. But the person who designed it, who understood the manufacturing process, who understood the capabilities that the software needed to have, didn't have interface design as one of the things that they understood. And so he was able to say, you can't, like, you shouldn't have like this stoplight system, so a red and a green, and that's it, because people are colorblind. And so like adjusted that. The people on the factory floor wear gloves. The buttons were too close together. And the person said, oh, no one's ever asked to actually look at the gloves we use while we're working. And so just that simple thing of just saying, like, you have to actually take into account the context of how of when you're designing things. And so, I mean, honestly, it goes along with the why of why we would be doing something like this. We also have to understand the context in which it's being used. And so that is something that we have introduced into our development plans, of not just having the people who would be managing these teams, but an actual active user as part of that development process, so we can understand how it's going to be used. Have someone there who's like, that's not going to work because the lights are too bright, so it can't be those colors because the glare. And just getting more people into that planning process, sort of that iterating process, is, I think, one of the biggest things that we've done, one of the changes in our development plan. And yeah, when it comes to that, and when it comes to reviewing and considering softwares that's already pre-built.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Josh. We are running out of time, so I'm gonna put Nick on the spot and ask him to give us a 1 minute, get his crystal ball out for 1 minute and tell us what he thinks is coming around the corner within manufacturing in terms of AI and low code. And then I'm going to try and get one question in before we leave. And anybody else who's asked a question who didn't get it answered, we will come back to you after the event to get that answered for you. Okay, but Nick, take it away. What's coming?
I'll be so speedy. I think the rise in generative AI is super interesting. It's going to unlock a lot of interesting natural language interfaces. We sort of talk about, philosophically, data scientists want to ask questions of their data. Generative AI is going to unlock literally asking questions of your data. Now, in what form that takes, how that goes, my crystal ball is not that clear yet, but I think all part of the citizen developer, the abstraction of low code, making it easier for a broad range of people to produce productive solutions, having a more natural language interface into your data, having a system that can scour your knowledge base and actually provide, use your machine learning to detect your anomalies, use generative AI to tell you what does that mean in terms of the 101 manuals of all the different systems we're integrating. What could that mean, type of thing. So with a few seconds to spare, I think natural language is going to be super interesting, just in terms of what that means for the role of the engineer on the floor.
Okay, one question perhaps on sustainability, because it's always a big topic in a lot of these events. Any specific examples of how low code applications can play a role in sustainability initiatives? So talk about reducing energy consumption, reducing waste, carbon emissions, supporting green manufacturing. Has anybody got any examples of how low code plays into that? Or am I going to pick the one question where no one has an example?
I would say I don't have an example of how it's working, but I can say, like, some of the, like, what I see when it comes to the things that could get in the way, that I think when it comes to low code, we really need to find a way to solve is, one issue that I've had with low code is, especially since, we're dealing with manufacturing data, we're dealing with sales data, shipping data, all of this stuff. It's very easy to put something together in a low code environment. The difficulty comes from the optimization of it. And so there's so many times where this something gets stood up and there is, like, the energy consumption of it is ridiculous, because someone actually has to go in and physically, like, code in optimization and do all this stuff to be able to get the resources down. And I think once that is sort of just the default, then it can go a long way. But until then, I think it is something that, from what I've seen and from my experiences, is still something that really needs to be looked at.
All right, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we have now run out of time. Discussion went on because it was very interesting, so I hope everybody enjoyed it. And as I said, we will get back to people to answer their other questions. Thank you to our panelists for your great insights. Thank you to FlowFuse, especially for sponsoring the session. Your support and all of you participants in this makes sure that we can deliver a lot of value through these events. So thank you. Thanks to the audience. And if you want to submit your thoughts on how you thought the session was, that would be great. I'll see you again at the next session but one, if you're coming back for that. Otherwise, please enjoy the rest of the event, and yeah, see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.